push them through the program. We try and let them, to some extent, set the pace because, you know, each person's individual with their needs, and then obviously there's issues that come up in life that can cause them to have setbacks. So we don't want to force them through when there could be things that would not be helpful to graduate them until they're resolved. But previously it was an option for me to decline somebody if I thought they were not appropriate. For example, if I saw somebody had multiple sanctions while in the jail, that they had violent tendencies while in the jail, or if I saw that the facts of their case didn't quite fit the statute's version of what a violent offender was, but still the facts were that they were violent, if they had delusions that told them that they should harm people, I had the option to decline them on my own. Recently, it's my understanding that the law has just changed. Julie and I figured that out on Friday, that the law has changed. I no longer have that discretion. So now it's solely up to the judge whether or not a person can come in, and there's no option for the state attorney's office to decline a person based on their history or the nature of the offense anymore. So once they do come in, though, as I discussed, there is that treatment plan that is formulated. From there, Julie and the people that work under her, as well as the people at the health department, they work together to try and find placement, whether it be drug counseling placement or figuring out if there's a dual diagnosis drug and mental health issue that they would be more appropriately placed in a different facility. And Julie can go into detail on what types of services we are able to use for those placements and what we can offer.
Julie, before you go, I wanted to just ask, it was a long explanation. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Chris at this time? Jim, anybody?
I'm going to have a comment, but I'm going to wait till you're done because I want to hear the whole program first.
I did have a question regarding something that you said specifically regarding the individuals that you were turning away. Have you set up any measures to, I'm assuming that you've turned them away out of concern for your safety or for your staff's safety. Have you implemented any measures to kind of get a buffer between these individuals and yourselves?
As far as?
Well, you said you were denying those that had violent tendencies. I'm assuming you were concerned that if you got in a specific situation with them, that someone could get hurt.
So there's a variety of situations you might deny them. Somebody could be a drug dealer, and obviously we're dealing with a population that's vulnerable, whether it be because they're already using drugs to help with their mental health issues or vice versa. So we don't want somebody who's a drug dealer in our program who's going to have influence over these people who are already vulnerable. Somebody who has a history of domestic violence and who may have violent tendencies as well. We don't want them in our program because unfortunately in our program a lot of the participants make friends, begin dating, and the last thing we want is somebody who's shown that they have violent tendencies to be preying on vulnerable women within our program. So what we try and do is to try and separate the people out who are going to be more at risk to the participants, but then also my concern is not for myself, but for the safety of the people who are leading the groups. So for example, I know one person I recently denied who would otherwise be eligible under the statute had voices telling him that he should hurt people, hurt minorities, and sexually assault women. I, on my own, chose to say decline him because although his crime fit and would technically make him eligible, my concern was twofold. I didn't want him being in a group with vulnerable women and potentially dating these women when he's delusional and hearing voices telling him to hurt people. But then two, I didn't want him in a group setting or on one-on-one basis with a therapist alone in a room with a female when he's having voices telling him to do this. So that's my concern, is more, not for me, but for the staff and the participants is always my primary concern on when previously I would decline somebody, is if I thought there was any way that either one of them could be at jeopardy, that's what we usually would do. And then we would try and seek services elsewhere outside of the program to ensure that that person's getting the best help that they can.
And I don't want to make it sound like we don't take violent offenders, because the statute, if you look at subsection 3, specifically says who we are not allowed to take by statute, but I would say at least a third of our participants are in on aggravated battery charges because schizophrenics, bipolar those diagnoses are often prone to violence. Oftentimes, family members will call and beg us to take people into the program, even though it was a family member that they assaulted. And those are people that we do take and we do work with. It's the extreme stranger danger violence and the ongoing episodes of some sort of psychotic activity that it tells them to do certain things. Those are the people we're careful of. And this is totally off topic, but I already touched base with Reagan on that. My bigger concern with the legislation, they changed this for drug court a couple of years ago, that they included a section that said, unless the prosecutor can still object if it's a class 2 or greater and it lists all the delivery charges. It's almost like the legislative branch forgot that the mentally ill and the veterans are also drug dealers. But I know Reagan has sent it to the, so I digress.
My question is, according to, if I understood this right, the judge can still say yes or no to that. So is there a mechanism where you can talk to the judge or you can present to the judge saying, we highly recommend we do not, this person not be in, this court for these reasons or this program for these reasons, so maybe you have the judge as a backup, or did I misunderstand that?
No, we do. We have a staff meeting every week before each of the, and they're now problem-solving courts instead of specialty courts. They've changed the jargon. So before each of our problem-solving court sessions, we have an hour-long staffing, and that includes the prosecutor, the public defender, the judge, the treatment professionals, all the people on the team. And we actually haven't had a big problem with the judges taking people's recommendation because they are very good at listening to each of the team members. We were just pointing out as a potential problem. So far, it actually has worked out pretty well.
What happens if someone meets the other criteria but has frontal lobe damage, or something other type of organic? Does that exclude them from the program in Will County?
It can, and I'm going to read you Silver Cross's response to that question that we asked them. They said, and they're talking about their intensive outpatient psych program, they cannot accept individuals with a primary diagnosis of an intellectual disability with a level of moderate retardation or below autism or dementia. Individuals with a history of extreme violence or aggression will be assessed on an individual basis. So the problem is, the majority of our program is either group work or individual counseling. And if there is no capacity for them to be able to understand and fully participate in treatment, then we can't effectively help this person change. The idea of mental health court is to maintain public safety and to help them understand and accept their mental illness and be able to take that, own that, and make themselves a better person. And if there is so much frontal lobe damage or autism, if they're low on the autism spectrum, then it's hard for us to make any significant progress with them.
I've just been hearing more and more how that population is a very hard population to serve, and I was just wondering what happened in Will County.
Yeah. So again, it's always case by case. Sometimes we'll do, the health department does all our mental health assessments, which is fine right now. Since there's 3 people at the health department, those assessments at the jail, 3 people in the jail from the health department, those assessments are getting done much more quickly. We're up to 30 days, we get them done. If they're outpatient, we now only have 1 person at the health department doing all of the applications for mental health assessments. And she is treading water and getting them done. In January, when the bond law changes, I'm sure Darren's talked to you about, it's going to, not quite sure how we're going to handle that, because there'll be, most of those people that are now getting assessments in the jail will largely be out of custody. So I think we need to closely monitor that so that we can make sure these people that are out on bond are getting the services that they need. In addition, we have about 50 people in mental health court now. We essentially have the same services we had when we started with 20. And drug court is now at 120 people. And across the board in our problem-solving courts, I was telling Darren yesterday, we do mental health assessments on everybody. We used to not be able to do them on anybody except the mental health court, but now through our grants, through Adult Redeploy and through our drug court grant, we have both a psychologist, a full-time master's level social worker, and a part-time master's level social worker that are all part of the team that can do mental health assessments on everybody that applies for any of the problem-solving courts. The problem, of course, is then outside psychiatric services. You know, they don't have one at the health department other than at the community health center now. So about 33% of our people, I have stats somewhere, about 50% of our people are referred to the community health center for psych services. And about 33% of our people have private insurance that they can go to a private psych. It's that other set of people that have some sort of managed care plan that isn't really accepted anywhere. Like even Silver, when we ask them, they don't accept Cigna, Blue Cross Choice, Blue Cross Select, Blue Cross Family Health Network, Harmony, Illini Care, County Care. I mean, these managed care plans, while they are said to allow for everybody to get services, most places don't. A lot of places don't take them, so that creates a problem. But that's why we do the groups that we do, both at our office, the state's attorney's office, and at the health department. So when Chris talked about they're engaged 3 or 4 days a week, you know, they have groups. An enormous part of our population has traumatic injuries or traumatic events in their life that cause part of their mental health and largely their addiction. In drug court, it's huge, the number of people that have had traumatic life events that have affected them. So we do TREM groups, we do substance abuse groups, we do MISA groups, they do men's groups, women's groups, and then we do psycho-ed groups that address all kinds of different things. So in addition to their individual therapy, either through an outside psych, outside psychologist, an outside managed social worker, drug court even pays for people that have mental health issues to go to. We have contracted people in the community that we have managed to get to such a rate that we can afford to send them to extra services besides their case management. So the program itself is 3 phases. The first phase, they come every week. They see their case manager, they see their therapist, they participate in groups, they pay down a portion of their fees. And across the board in our problem-solving courts, we've now changed to 4 phases so that if they're inpatient, to recognize the achievement of finishing this, they go to phase 2, even though they still come to court once a week. And then in phase 2, they come every other week. In phase 3, we try to establish more independence and get them to take care of themselves more. And then finally, we recognize them with a graduation. I did give you information. Cornerstone now has a MISA program so that they do mentally ill substance abusers. Linden Oaks Linden Oaks has always dealt with MISA program. They also have a medication-assisted treatment program too for Vivitrol, Suboxone. Family Guidance does MISA programming. They do the Vivitrol at the jail, but they also have mental health counselors. So if the people going there for substance abuse have mental health issues, they can see a mental health counselor there. The straight substance abuse is really hard to get. Silvercross discontinued their straight substance abuse program in January, and I certainly didn't know it, but they certainly, you know, everybody, when St. Joe's discontinued theirs, people got really upset. Silvercross stopped theirs in January, and I don't think anybody even knew they stopped. So if you're mentally ill and have substance abuse issue, it's actually much easier to get services than if you're just a drug addict. So we use whatever resources we can pay, you know, we can put together in the community. The reason you have these little Silvercross bags is because we went out and met with Silvercross to ask, hey, what do you do? What's the new place going to be? What's Silver Oaks going to be? What insurance do you take? Who do you take? What's the process? So essentially the process for anybody that's an emergency is to go in through the emergency room department and see what you qualify for. But they have agreed to do phone screens with the jail if we need to get people into services. Our primary provider is the health department. And as the health department loses their ability to provide those resources, they have deflected some of it over to the community health center, and we use them. But resources in the community for the mentally ill are hard to come by because of either lack of insurance or lack of capacity.
Jim?
I actually have a comment and some questions. First, my comment, take this in the right light, Julie.
Okay.
You know, you kind of transition between drug use and mental health. I don't think, in my opinion, that serves the mental health community. In my view, mentally ill people are mentally ill. They're not drug addicts. Doesn't mean they don't take drugs. But I think you lose the message a little bit. You kind of go in between the two.
I apologize. And the health department does have very specific diagnoses that they automatically accept: schizophrenia, bipolar, major depressive disorder, and others.
So the reason I mention that is because I think when we talk about mental health issues, we should just talk about the mental health portion. That's just a comment. You can take it or leave it.
It's hard when I wear all these hats to figure out which one I'm talking.
You know, I became aware and was exposed to mental health courts many years ago. You know, they started in Dade County, Florida, probably 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And I had the opportunity on a number of occasions to visit those courts. You know, in most instances, when you went into those courts, even as a layman, you know, you didn't need to tell me they had mental health issues. You know, it becomes pretty obvious that, you know, they have issues. But one of the things I thought was interesting as they matured is that they went into a whole law enforcement educational. They designated officers to specifically deal with mental health folks that are in the community. They got to know them, know who they were. Now, Dade County is a larger county than Will County. But it does become kind of a subset of the community, the mental health, folks with mental health issues. So they treat a little more officer training. The thing that concerns me is that, you know, so they had a continuing program. So, you know, they knew Johnny, you know, who had issues. So there'd be an incident, you know, that the officer who wasn't trained would say, you have somebody you think, you know, is this one of your people? And they would say, oh yeah, that's Johnny. He must be off his medication. Let me call his mother. Don't arrest him. We'll take him to the clinic, and I'll have his mother there, and so forth and so on. So they were able to triage the known folks who were in our mental health courts if they did get off their medication. Because whether they're in a program for a year or 3 years, at least my observation has been that they needed some kind of continued treatment and medication. And if that was disrupted, they would kind of relapse and start doing behaviors that would wind them up in the jail again. So I know we're not there yet, but the reason I'm mentioning this is certainly I think it could be a long-term goal, or there may be things we're already doing with folks. If for example, like say, Alice gets off her medication, and it's like, well, all you have to do is get her back on her medication. Let's get her to the clinic, and so forth, and keeps them out of the court system, the penal system. So I don't know if we're working on that, or if you do have a program already that deals with some of that. I'm just curious.
I know we do, there's training in the jail for the officers in the jail to recognize mental illness. Many of the local police departments are they call it CIT training, crisis intervention training. I know JPD was trying to do one, but then it got canceled for some reason because of funding, because the problem with the local law enforcement is it's a 40-hour training, so they have to commit to these officers being free to take this training. JPD downtown officers in particular will come into our office and ask us about Jelani or some of the people that we know, and say, hey, we're having problems again. Shorewood came in on one of our guys because there was a kid that was doing some
Yeah.
behavior that was causing problems, and asked us to take a look at this kid, and we did. So as local law enforcement people in Will County recognize that there is this court, they certainly come in and ask us about it, how we get the word out that we're there to all these local departments. I don't know if we could send, I suppose I could send all of them a letter and offer to come out and do some smaller training as opposed to the long-term CIT training.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's just the fact that they're aware of. I would assume that most officers have some experience or some training, even if it's an extensive training, and mental health, folks with mental health issues. Certainly making them aware that the person in their community has been in the program, if there's a problem, I mean, contact whoever, contact us, we can perhaps help. I think just making the law enforcement community aware of folks that are within our community that have these issues, who occasionally, get up one morning and say, I don't need this medication anymore, and that's what folks that have mental health issues do. All of a sudden they decide, I don't need this. I used to have a neighbor, and say, oh, she's on medication, I'm going to call her dad. It was pretty obvious, she was schizophrenic, I think good communication, that's the way these types of programs ultimately can work.
Right.
Because it's a lifelong endeavor, it doesn't go away, right?
And that's why we try to get them to understand it, accept it, and continue with their treatment. I know Darren had asked me, in other criminal populations, is there some way to identify the mentally ill? Because the people that go into court and exhibit behaviors where you know there's mental health issues actually get help. The people that have mental health issues, and maybe those are quieter depression issues, often go unnoticed in the criminal justice system. Now, maybe with the new pretrial services you're getting through the probation, or they do a 14-day screen at the health department for everybody that comes in. Again, what happens once these people are released without bond, I have no idea, but the health department screens everybody that comes into the jail to find out if there are mental health issues, and then tries to do linkage for them. But those are things that the county's going to have to take a look at as they start letting more people out.
Kathleen, I know you had raised your hand for a moment. Did you have a question?
I was going to answer some of your questions about the police. I train all the police with Narcan, and one of the major things they've asked for is mental health training. They are definitely at a disadvantage because they're not trained thoroughly enough to be able to manage folks in the community, and they are the ones who know. I mean, usually the police are the first ones who know what's going on in the community. The problem is there is no place for people to go. We don't have services in our community. When you said if they know they're a mental health patient, then you get them hooked back up with services and they go to their clinic. There's no clinic, okay? We don't have a place for people to go who need services. So there's the fallacy in the system, is that we can deflect. We can't deflect if people don't have anywhere to go. And I just wanted to clarify something else too. Mental health illness is a brain disease, in the same way that substance abuse is a brain disease. And they co-occur most frequently. And in fact, most people who have a substance use disorder have a mental illness. And so that's why the courts are very innovative by combining the problem-solving courts, the problem-solving courts, because that addresses the whole person, and that addresses the issues the whole person is dealing with. Separating mental health from substance use leaves a whole category of people who aren't able to be cared for. It is very difficult to get co-occurring care in Will County. I didn't know that Silver Cross stopped taking substance abuse either.
Straight substance abuse. They'll take co-occurring, Cornerstone takes co-occurring, and Notice takes co-occurring.
The problem is they really don't have the programs to deal with those folks. They're trying because they get better reimbursement, I would think. So that's all I wanted to say.
We are trying some other more innovative things too. We are doing fitness programming that they can go to instead of a 12-step program, because we recognize that the people in mental health court would probably benefit more from something that raises their self-esteem. We've tried to expose them to some yoga. There's this new bed out that they use at some of the treatment facilities. They have all the data on it too. That it's a binaural beat bed that does positive affirmations and trains them to calm their heartbeat. We don't do acupuncture, but who was the lady talking about acupuncture from the health department? At the heroin forum, there was the CEO, the new CEO, I think, or medical director for the health department was talking about acupuncture. So there are a lot of, it wasn't Sue, it was the doctor.
Dr. Boyd?
Thank you.
What was that?
I don't know much about acupuncture, but we are always, I mean, I'm a resource person, so I'm always looking for what new ways can we treat the mentally ill that might help. I mean, I'm always open to looking at new things, and maybe people's insurance will pay for it. Maybe I can talk somebody in the community to coming in and doing a group for us. But as Kathleen said, there aren't enough resources in the community. You know, the health department doesn't have one yet, but it's kind of a new and upcoming thing for the NAMI population. They do something called the living room concept.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, the home, yeah.
Where people can drop into like a living room type setting if they're in crisis, and there are people there, and they, you know, it's not like you have to have an appointment, but it's more like a drop-in kinds of thing that's a safe, good place for them to be. Are you inviting us to your living room?
If they showed up at my living room, they would leave very quickly. Little kids running around, they'd be stressed out, put to work right away.
I don't know. Do you have any other questions?
I'm going to make one more comment about mental health and drugs. Mental health is still mental health. I realize there's a link between drug use and mental health.
Actually, that's why we use the term.
But to commingle them, I'm just saying my view, to commingle them in this discussion about the different courts, I think doesn't serve us well. Mental health folks are mental health. Drug folks are drug people, even though I know there's a link between the two. I'm just trying to make a point.
Jim, we try really hard to figure out which came first, the
I
chicken
know,
or the egg, and
I
put
know.
them in the appropriate
Figure it
court.
out.
But I'm
You
going
know.
to tell you, across the board,
Well,
the
let's put it this
majority
way.
have both.
Let's put it this way. In my view, almost all mental health people have substance abuse problems. People who have substance abuse problems don't necessarily have mental health issues.
I can live.
Okay, that's my point.
Lori,
The mental health issues they have, basically, are because of their drug use.
Or because they had an underlying mental health issue that was not
Then
diagnosed.
their mental health, there's a mental health issues. Anyway, what I want to say is, when you talk about resources, unfortunately, and you see it in the big counties throughout the country, whether it's a Cook County, a Dade County, a LA County, the counties the jail system is taking on the mental health treatment. You know, the largest mental health facility in the country is run by LA County Sheriff's Department. You weren't aware of that? I'm sure.
Yes, yes.
You know, well, one of the, I think the second largest is Cook County. You know, and, you know, I think that's going to be the issue, at least people who are in the system, is I do think that, you know, not that we have the resources for it, but unfortunately, I think counties are going to wind up taking more of this on. It's going to be through the Sheriff's Department, which I don't think is necessarily the best way of doing it, but we're doing that to a degree now, correct?
The Sheriff's Department does treat a lot of mentally ill. I mean, Cook County has a huge mentally ill population and does a really nice job of having a separate unit for them. But Kathleen said it well, Jim. You have to remember, these are brain diseases. addiction is a brain, it's not a moral failing. You know, when somebody has type 2 diabetes because of the way they ate, it's still a disease.
You preach it to the choir. I have it in my own family, you know, so it's like, you know, I mean, I don't make a secret of it, you know. I have my youngest son's a year clean, August 16th. You know, I know exactly, dealt with it since he's been 13 years old. You know, so I know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm not, and by the way, he's not mentally ill.
That you know of.
No, I don't think he is, because I've sent him everywhere. Fortunately, we have resources, you know, even though it was like probably a number of college educations.
Well, when somebody gets referred to the problem-solving courts, we often tell the attorneys, refer them to whichever court you might think they're appropriate.
Yeah.
We'll start the evaluations and we'll figure out where we think they get the best service.
I guess I'm just trying to say, one's not, the courts I'm talking about, one's not necessarily, they serve different purposes. One deals with mental health, one deals with
Lori?
So just because I did that for a living, the hospital that I worked at had a huge behavioral health, very good in Indiana. More often than not, there was a coexisting diagnosis. The problem is, as Kathleen said, and you're saying, these folks are not, that have substance abuse issues are not necessarily diagnosed with the mental health. But I guarantee you, 98% of the time, they coexist. The other thing, I know when I was at the meeting last month, I do believe the courts are recognizing that we have to cross over with this. Unless I completely missed something when the judge was here speaking last month, that's exactly what she was talking about. And this is how...
Come forward, Steve.
Hey, what are you gonna do? I thought you said.
Good morning.
It's a nice day.
Bye, Steve. Go ahead, Lori.
So, I mean...
We needed that done.
The way I know we did, this is getting very serious. What I'm seeing is that we are making progress as a county. And this is some of the things, when I went to NACO, these types of things were discussed on how we need to coordinate to get all of this under control. So, yes, it has to be done together, not separately.
We get your point, Jim, we just don't always agree with you.
No, you're missing my point. If you go down that road, then what are they? It's all the same?
No, but the more chronically and severe mentally ill end up in mental health court, and we address that as the most specific issue, and then the drugs are underlying. In drug court, we treat the drug addiction, but we absolutely also treat the mental health issues, and that's why we have mental health providers across the board in all the courts.
Bob?
How did you get it?
All of our officers are going through the CIT training. State law changed, and now all probationary officers, starting in 2018, will have to go through it in the police academy.
Very good.
That's great.
Good job, thank you.
That's probation, Bob? Has it? Probation officers or all?
Any new hires that go through the police academy.
So new hires will get it.
Yes.
Prior to arriving.
Prior to arriving to us, we have to have it complete by 2019, I believe.
Okay.
That's good.
That's
That's
awesome.
good.
That's really good.
All right. Julie, thank you very much for coming in
Thank you for
today.
having us.
We appreciate that. And
I would cordially invite all of you at any time to come to any of the four problem-solving courts. Mental health court is every Tuesday afternoon. Adult redeploy and veterans court is every Wednesday afternoon. And drug court is every Thursday afternoon, at least for now. At some point, they may be more frequent.
One more question before you go, Julie. Veterans Court.
Graduation's tomorrow, if you want to come.
I know it is. Well, you know, I happen to think, I know politicians show up for those, and, you know, we're elected officials, we're also politicians. I think that when they don't really contribute, I don't know why they're showing up, but anyway.
I send an invitation.
I know you do. But Veterans Court, I'm just kind of curious about how Veterans Court works. Obviously, they have to be a veteran, but it could be a whole host of issues. So whether it be could be drug addiction, it could be mental health, it could be, I don't know, it could be
It could be a traumatic brain injury.
It could be a number of-
We
yeah.
have a large number of people that are PTSD. We have a number of drug addictions. Many come back and start using alcohol.
So that court, deals with all.
Yes, it does. And again, they get a substance abuse, a mental health, and then we try to, and we work very closely with the VA. We have a Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist that's on our team to coordinate services through the VA. We work with the Veterans Assistance Commission. There are actually more resources for the vets out there than there are for the
Well, that
other
was my
courts.
next question. So the resources there, is it basically just hooking them up with the resources that we know are available through either the Veterans Administration or the VAC can help, or there could be some other grants or private funding that comes into play for veterans and so forth. So we can hook up with those services for the most part?
We can and do. We also take veterans into the program that have an other than honorable discharge and have no VA benefits.
Okay.
And we still provide them with whatever host of services is available to both mental health court and veterans and drug court. We try to look at the whole person in all aspects and make sure that we treat them. And then we reach out to other providers, like the Gary Sinise Foundation has kind of adopted us, so they are buying gift cards for each of the veterans graduates this year also.
By the way, I'm going to something on Fridays at Frankfurt, Barbecue for the Brave. It's a thing for veterans, service basically disabled veterans. It's CD&Me, if anybody wants to go.
My daughter works.
It's a great time. They've built one home for a disabled veteran, triple amputee. But I think even making them aware of, they're part of a larger organization, but making them aware. I know they have help with some mental health issues. It's a larger organization. This organization specifically builds homes for disabled veterans. I hate to call them disabled because they're pretty able, they just need help.
Correct. But I mean, we've reached out, there's a paintball organization that's all veterans that has donated to one of our veterans that just had absolutely nothing. I mean, didn't even have, the ability to get from one place to the other, clothes. We try to reach out to anybody we can think of to address specific
So
issues.
Veterans Court, but I guess my point is everything that's in all the other specialty courts, they're all kind of wrapped up into that Veterans Court. You can have all types of issues. It could be even this I'm broken homeless kind of issue.
You committed a crime, it sure can.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to throw that Veterans Court. I was interested exactly how.
Wednesday afternoons.
Okay.
And Debbie has a question as well.
My question is, your patient friend that you brought to join us today, what role does he play?
He actually goes into the group therapy. We have a secondary handler who is one of our therapists, Dr. Terry McCormick. She takes him into the therapy sessions with her when she does group counseling, and Angus's job is to go and comfort the people as they're speaking. He's able to sense when people are stressed. He's able to determine when they're anxious, and when they're speaking or talking about some of the traumatic events in their life, he goes up and does his thing, which is kind of be that annoying dog that always wants to be pet.
Yeah.
You think he could calm down? I think just hit Russell like a crazy dog.
Angus thinks he's a lap dog,
Yeah,
and
he
sometimes
does.
he gets in your lap.
That's good.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, thank you. Continuing on, there's no other new business. Any public comment? Public comment, anyone? There's no chairman's report, no executive session. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? All opposed? Very good. Thank you. Next meeting.